Hey there everybody, it's me, Cosmo the Coder, and welcome once again to another Humble Bundle review. This week we're looking at the Humble 2K Bundle 2, which sounds like it has too many 2s in it, but it's okay, it's not too bad, you know. It's a little bit of a mixed bag this week, but you'll see what I mean in just a minute. So let's have a quick look and see what we have in this bundle. And I'm burbling, so I'm trying to sort this out. So straight up then, we have at the white tier, pay $1 or more to unlock 3 games. First up we have The Darkness 2, which is at the moment $19.99 on Steam. It's essentially a rather gory first-person shooter which was inspired by the actual popular comic book series The Darkness. You play a guy called Jackie I'm going to mispronounce his name, Estacado, who in the first game got hold of his power called the Darkness, and you're now the head of a New York crime family and wielder of the ancient and ruthless force called the Darkness. And thanks to an attack by, as you can see, thanks to an attack made by several men who want to take possession of the Darkness, the Darkness is unleashed, and you utilize it to basically take out your enemies and fight the forces that want you dead. It's actually quite a good first-person shooter, considering how old it is, and considering the price, is also a very good deal. At the moment on Steam, it's 88% recently, 90% overall, and 77% on Metacritic, so it's quite a well-received game. I will warn you, though, that it does kind of end on a bit of a cliffhanger, and since it's quite old and you haven't heard of The Darkness 3, there's kind of a concern that maybe there isn't going to be any continuation of the story. But we'll never say never, huh? Stranger things have happened, as you'll see as with one of the games further along in a minute. Spec Ops: The Line is, well, it's actually quite a well-known game if you haven't heard of it. It's basically a third-person shooter with an action-packed, story-rich campaign that makes you question your morality as it puts you in the middle of unspeakable situations. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's going to kind of ruin the whole effect of the game, but overall it's actually a really good game. It's $19.99 on Steam, so quite a high price considering it's actually in the sort of very low tier of the Humble Bundle. It's in the 90s on Steam, it's 76 on Metacritic. It's an exceptionally good, well-written game. It's a little over the top, but then it always kind of is when you're dealing with kind of war games, or games set during certain wars and things. But it'll make you think, it'll make you question a lot of things in the world. Sort of what would you do if this and if that. But definitely worth a check out. And I was going to press play and I didn't, but never mind. Duke Nukem Forever. Now, a lot of things have been said about Duke Nukem Forever that I'm not going to go over with. It's currently $14.99 on Steam. You can ask, why is it $14.99 on Steam? Now, I'm a big fan of Duke Nukem, and I loved Duke 3D, and if you know anything about the history of Duke Nukem Forever, you know that it was, it's one of the games that went through an absolute horrible development hell. Basically, it is a first-person shooter where you basically just get loads of guns and shoot aliens. It's kind of a reimagining, if you want, of Duke 3D. It's not really a sequel to Duke 3D, although it sort of is and it sort of isn't. It's sort of what 3D Realms were trying to sort of do, was sort of redo Duke 3D, but using a more modern engine and using a more modern technology, and they did quite a good job. But the problem was the game was released like 8 years too late. If it actually was being released when it was supposed to be released, then it would have actually done quite well, in my opinion, because it was actually, when it actually did come out, the first person shooters had totally changed in its dynamic. The whole sort of element, that the whole thing that sort of made Duke 3D good sort of was phased out over the next sort of 10 plus years, and then finally when Duke Forever came out, it just, well, it just didn't really work. And as you can see there's some exceptional nudity there. I might get in trouble with YouTube for this, but regardless of that, it isn't a bad game, let's put it that way. It's quite a good fun game, and you can see what is in the heart of Duke Forever. It was trying to sort of be the same as Duke 3D, but more than Duke 3D, and it does do a good job at that. But when you compare it to other first-person shooters, it's just not really that good, which is a sad fact in what it is. Anyway, review-wise on Steam, it's around in the 70s on Steam. It's 54% on Metacritic. For the price, it's worth getting in. Just to sort of say that you have it. Whether or not you want to play it or not, well, that's completely up to you. It's fun, but it gets a bit samey after a while. That's my general opinion. Moving on to the green tier, which at the moment for me is $6.85, or about £5 or so, and I've realised I've not turned the ticker on. First up, we have Civilization 5, which is essentially a 4X turn-based strategy game where you become the ruler of the world by establishing and leading a civilization from like the dawn of man into the space age. You wage wars, you conduct diplomacy, discover new technologies, you sort of go head to head with some of the world's greatest leaders. It's one of the sort of common sort of, if you have ever played one of the Civilization games, you know exactly what kind of game this is. It's really well reviewed. It's in the high 90s on Steam, overwhelmingly positive on Steam. It's 90% on Metacritic. It's a good game if you like the turn-based sort of strategy games and like building an empire and essentially doing that kind of not real-time strategy, because of course it's turn-based strategy, but it's that sort of effect that you sort of get from that kind of game. Not really my cup of tea, but it's still it's extremely well-received game. Let's put it that way. NBA 2K16. I've heard a lot about NBA 2K16, and let's put it this way: the reviews don't sort of do it any favors. Let's put it that way. It's actually the most expensive game in the bundle. It's $39.99 on Steam. Would you believe it? Actually, I just realized maybe I didn't say what Civilization 5 was. It's it's $19.99. I misread that. $19.99 on Steam. Anyway, moving on. Essentially, the biggest sort of problem with this NBA game is, well, first of all, it's a basketball game, and so unless you are really into basketball, you're not going to be interested in this game whatsoever. The campaign is basically being written and directed by the acclaimed filmmaker Spike Lee, and a lot of people would basically say it's a load of rubbish. It is what it is. It's a basketball game where you basically build up a character and build up skills. You can play the story mode if you like. You can play a management sort of mode where you go through and do games and stuff like that. It's essentially what it is. It's basketball sim. Simple as that, really. Mafia 2, the digital deluxe edition, which is quite good because it actually includes a lot of the DLC and everything that comes with it, is $29.99 on Steam. It's essentially sort of to do with it's sort of like with Grand Theft Auto, but sort of more focused on the mafia-esque thing. It's a story-rich game where you get to explore the city. It's open world, but you've got various missions to complete. It sort of spans a few decades during the sort of the era of the mafia sort of growing and developing. So it's a developmental game. You actually build, and you see your sort of self become a made man and build up this relationship with characters and everything. You get a full feel of the storyline and everything else in this kind of game. It's exceptionally well received. It's in the 90s on Steam. It's 77% on Metacritic, but that's just because of various issues in terms of what people think of this game. And Mafia 3 is due out at the end of this year, so it's definitely worth a look at if you're interested in anything sort of in that sort of vein, an open world, story-rich game. Definitely worth a look at. Now I'm going to skip over the Battleborn Summer Skins pack, basically because it's not really worth talking about more than sort of saying it's a skins pack for Battleborn. We also have more games coming soon, which is a bit difficult to kind of predict because 2K basically do a lot of different games, as you can see from the sort of the lineup. We've got first-person shooters, third-person shooters, sports games, civilization, turn-based strategy games, open-world games. So it could be that they go into the realms of Borderlands, because that's in there. Bioshock's a possibility. It's not really much of a possibility, but we'll have to see about that. It's difficult to say where they're going to go, really, in any sort of terms like that. Now, the blue tier, pay $15 or more, and you get, first off, Battleborn. Now, Battleborn is kind of what would happen if Borderlands and Overwatch were sort of blended together, and out would come this rather sort of, depending on your point of view, the sort of weird sort of team-based player versus player game that's very similar to Overwatch, but unfortunately not as good as Overwatch. Although it came out before Overwatch, it's basically had a few weeks before it did, and then Overwatch basically flattened it in terms of games wise. Sad as it is, it just you can't compete with Blizzard. Blizzard is the god of games when it releases, and if you compete with them, you will lose. It's not a bad game in itself. I played the actual beta when it first came out, and it's quite good. It sort of takes the sort of team-based first-person shooter game, puts plot elements into the missions, so it sort of feels a bit like what's it called, Destiny, in certain terms, in that you have to go off and do various missions. The characters have humor, and there's a lot of sort of silliness that sort of mimics the whole Borderlands sense of humor, and you certainly get a sort of style of sense of this has kind of got Borderlands' sort of sense of humor within it. It's difficult to sort of say anything more than you already would know. If you have played games like Overwatch, you know exactly what this game is like. You unlock characters and skins and all that kind of stuff the more you sort of play. The storylines, all the missions are quite bizarre. It's not a bad game in itself. It's actually on par with NBA in price wise. It's $39.99, so you're actually getting an exceptionally good deal. The sad thing is, though, the prices Battleborn have been plummeting ever since Overwatch came out, because it just can't compete, really. Review wise, it's 54 recently on Steam, 65 overall and the general feeling is that it is a good game, but when you compare it to other things, sadly, to Overwatch, you're not going to get much more than that. It's 70% on Metacritic, so generally speaking, if you're interested in it and want to give it a go, it's a good price. You do get some platinum currency for it. What that actually allows you to do in other than sort of buy things inside the game, that's about it, really. Finally, we look at Borderlands, the pre-sequel. Now, Borderlands, the pre-sequel, is $29.99 on Steam. It's basically set between Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2, and basically explains explains the origins of several characters that appear in Borderlands 2, and also how Handsome Jack, who is basically I always get them muddled, is the antagonist or the enemy in Borderlands 2. He basically explains how he becomes who he becomes, and how we could get from Borderlands 1 to Borderlands 2. It's a pretty good game in itself. It's reviewed on, it's in the 80s on Steam, and it's 75% on Metacritic. The only real complaint I ever had about it is that although it does add a load of new bits and pieces to the actual sort of Borderlands universe, it is essentially the same as Borderlands. So if you play Borderlands 1 and you play Borderlands 2, this does add a few new things, but it gets very samey after a little while. And, it's good for what it is, but overall, Borderlands 3 needs to actually when they actually make and finish Borderlands 3, it really just needs to add more originality, because although this does add some new stuff like going out into space and low gravity and new characters, you basically feel it's like just a reinvention of some of the stuff that's already in place, but from both Borderlands 1 and 2. So it's a good game, but you'll feel that you've played most of it before if you've played both the first and second games. So there you have it. Now this bundle also includes coupons for the 10% off Humble Monthly and 40% off XCOM 2 if you're interested in that. But I'll leave that up to you to decide whether you are or interested. If you've listened to any of my previous reviews, you know what I think about vouchers. Now the good thing is it looks like this is actually separate keys, so that's always a good thing in my book, because sometimes when they group them all together it's just annoying, because then if you own most of these games you don't get much in the way of extras. But overall I think it's not a bad bundle. It's quite a diverse bundle, an interesting little bundle. Battleborn being included is a bit sad because it's only been out a few months, and that kind of sort of shows you how good or bad Battleborn is selling. I don't know. I'm interested to see how the expansion goes, but overall, I think this bundle actually deserves quite a high score. I'm going to give it roughly an 8 out of 10. It's quite an interesting bundle. It's got a lot of different games. Okay, it's got a basketball game. I'll let that go just because of the fact that if you're going to buy this bundle, I seriously doubt you're just going to buy it for NBA. But overall, it's not a bad bundle. I'm going to sort of go through my games and see what games I actually do have and decide whether or not I want to buy Battleborn. I actually don't own Spec Ops, and it's on my wish list, so I might just stick for the white tier. But I'll debate it later. Anyway, now last week's bundle doesn't have any expansion, if it actually loads, as we mentioned last week. But overall, what I'd say is, decide what you want to do with either bundles. So anyway, moving on. As always, thanks to you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, share, dislike, comments, whatever you like, and I will usually respond in some manner if you have asked me to do so. I've been Cosmo the Coder. Thank you for watching my review video, and hopefully I'll see you next week for another Humble Bundle review. Till next time, happy gaming, and see you later.